Good afternoon. Welcome to ThinkTech Hawaii's Business in Hawaii program. My name is Kathleen Lee with Kathleen Lee Consulting, and today we will be talking about economic diversification in the time of and post COVID-19. With me today is a friend of mine, Christopher Lum Lee. Chris, welcome to the show.
Hi, Kathleen. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Absolutely. So tell us a bit about yourself and what you do before we launch into our conversation today.
Sure. So I'm a something of a former career bureaucrat. Spent 8 years with the state and with the city in various administrative capacities. Um, During that time, I've developed kind of an interest in business and entrepreneurship. So at one point, I was writing for seekingalpha.com, primarily in dealing with individual stocks and fixed income securities, but mostly in economic trends and analyses, focusing on emerging and frontier markets. Over the last couple of years, I've gotten into real estate investing in single family rental units in the Detroit, Michigan, and Memphis, Tennessee markets. And I'm currently the owner of Pioneer Gear LLC, where we sell uh, outdoors and camping gear as an retailer.
Wonderful. So the topic of today came up during one of our conversations this month, but before we break down your ideas on economic diversification, tell us a bit more about your thoughts on that, on the actual concept, or even the words economic diversification.
Sure. So when we look at economic diversification in the context of Hawaii, I'm putting this discussion in the framework of the flow of money into the state, within the state through consumer spending and consumer activities, and the eventual outflow of funds. So when we look at funds coming into the state in the pre-COVID-19 era, funds were coming in from the tourism industry and military and government spending. So with that inflow of funds coming in, that would then trickle into the consumers and into the state economy through general excise tax and various other taxes and fees. At which point, then the businesses, then the government could then hire workers who can then spend that money internally within the state. And then, of course, everyone knows that the outflow of funds primarily goes to places like Las Vegas or when our local people travel abroad.
Okay. So when we were having this conversation, you had broken down your ideas into a handful of sectors. And this is very timely, especially since I understand that the state is focusing on creative ways or creative sectors on what we can delve into to, help our state recover. And one of the industries that you mentioned was agriculture. So tell us a bit more about that.
Sure. As far as agriculture goes, agriculture encompasses many commodities across that spectrum, whether they be vegetables, sugar, cocoa, cacao, coffee, so on, many consumables. When I talk about agriculture and the use of that in diversifying the economy, I want to be very specific that the diversification comes in two forms. One, it comes in addressing food security and the production of food that can be used or consumed rather within Hawaii and its islands, because up to this point we're importing a lot of our foods. And as some economists will say, when you import and you are an importer economy, you're importing poverty because you are exporting the jobs that is producing the goods in which you are importing. We have the environment and we have the land and the political will to promote agriculture and preserve our agriculture land. So that affords us the opportunity to grow crops, produce food, which we can then sell in our local stores and our local markets. But what I think is important as far as economic diversification goes and the flow of money is we can export commodities that we produce. Two of the big ones that you see on shelves very commonly, and you may overlook them, but really they have a lot of potential, is the use of things like macadamia nuts and coffee. When you look at our tourists coming in from the mainland US or from internationally, when they leave with boxes and bags of coffee and macadamia nuts of the different flavors. This is important because this also illustrates that there is a demand for our local products. We can then export that product into mainland US through the various coffee chains or through regular mom pop coffee shops. What's interesting to note is that there are only 3 places in this country that has the topography available to grow coffee, and that's Georgia, California, and Hawaii. But as of right now, Hawaii is probably the only main producer of domestic US coffee. Compare that to the broader global economy, the South American and the African countries are also major producers. So when you go to say Starbucks or any of the coffee shops, you will see various blends, whether they be from Tanzania or Botswana or South Africa. So Hawaii has that unique opportunity because we also have various types of coffee, not only Kona coffee, we have Ka'u coffee, we have coffee that is grown in Wailua. So that gives us an opportunity to have ample product where we can export to mainland US and internationally, not only in countries such as Japan, China, or South Korea, where we get a lot of our visitors from, but when you look at other countries that are beginning to develop their tourism industry, and tourism in a lot of those foreign countries are a diversification method for them because a lot of them are exporter nations originally. So countries such as Kazakhstan, Middle Eastern countries, or places like Saudi Arabia, for example, these are all markets that people are afraid to go to for obvious reasons and not so obvious reasons. Like it's just people don't know how to get there. But it's really not that difficult with respect to being able to contacting business chains over there and asking if they'd be willing to sell some of the product. It's the same thing as if you were to sell to local consumers. It's just that now they're tens of thousands of miles away.
Okay. Another industry that you had mentioned was the film industry, and you had ideas on how we as a state can further develop that or, widen our resources. So let's go into that.
So the film industry, what draws a lot of the productions here, aside from tax incentives and change of venues, because we have, if you look in major mainstream film media in the United States, filming is generally shot in the same places. In Hawaii, they have, when you look at the franchises such as Jurassic World or Hawaii Five-O or Magnum PI, they get tax incentives and they're encouraged to come down here and do their production. When they come down here, however, they bring their A-list stars to be the headliners of these shows and these productions. And then you may hire local production crew, whether they be the stagehands or um, lower level producers, but they'll bring in their producers and their staff from the mainland. When I'm talking about really promoting our film industry, we have great venue that we can do it. We also have wonderful people here who are capable of being on camera or being agents or producers or stage crew. And while there's no centralized one-stop shop, so to speak, for training opportunities, there are a bunch of training opportunities available here through various places such as Diamond Head Theater as one example to get stage presence. If you want to go into stage acting in other venues through Leeward Community College, if you want to learn the production side, the off camera and the video editing in that area, you could go to Olelo. If you wanted to go into writing, then the community, or I should, not only the community colleges, but the other university campuses also have creative writing and those types of programs where they can write specifically for media. So the idea of promoting a film industry here is to try to elevate and promote our local talent. And there are individuals here, such as Teddy Wells from the Hawaii Actors Network, Han, who are working very feverishly to try to make a promotion of that and build a legitimate standalone industry here. And right now they're having conversations with people in the legislature as well as the executive branch to try to get more attention and favor drawn to that arena. If productions are made here with local talent, we can then quote unquote export that those creative products outside of Hawaii. We can go to the mainland U.S. Through international film festivals in the United States. We can also go internationally. The various countries in Asia have international film festivals on an annual basis. European countries have international film festivals. So it's another venue to promote our local talent and opportunities to come to Hawaii, film your production, and use our talent not only on screen but off screen as well.
It's wonderful. You've named two sectors so far. So we started off with agriculture, and then you went into film. And another sector that you were talking about was the finance industry. So delve a bit more into how we can, incorporate that into economic diversification for Hawaii.
Sure. Sure. The finance industry, I want to be really emphasize this point, is that the finance industry is not only banking. Banking is a big component of it. It's everywhere you see, but it's not the definition and epitome of the financial industry. There are investment management, there's asset management, there's research, um, there's also the trading and exchange side of things. In across the world, there are really three main financial hubs: New York, London, and Tokyo. And the financial hubs are predicated or defined rather as places that have many banking institutions and where a lot of financial transactions occur every year. And financial transactions could be things like consumer banking, which is your deposits, your bank accounts. It could be commercial banking, which would be the business side or real estate development side. But then you also have, like I said, trading and exchanges, which encompasses many types of securities, whether they be the fixed income market, not only in your local community, but also in mainland US or foreign economies. You also have foreign exchange transactions that take place. So, the long short of it is there's a lot of ways that we can create a financial hub in Hawaii because we're in a geographically lucky position. We have the mainland US on this side, but we also have Asia and Central Asia and the Europes on this side. So we can be a central conduit for that. What I really think is interesting is that we don't have to my knowledge, we don't have any research firms here that can research either private non-traded companies or publicly traded companies. Again, because of our geographical location, we have a good opportunity to set up something here in Hawaii where so I'll prompt, so it kind of threw me off, sorry, where we can create a research firm where we can investigate research opportunities in Asia and in the European states and in the US. And because we have business coming in from Asia into Hawaii, it almost makes sense to have something like that.
Okay. Well, so far you've named three. So we are going to go on a short break, but right after that, we'll go into a couple more ideas that you have regarding going back to our topic today, economic diversification during the time of the pandemic.
Aloha, I'm Christine Linders, a physical therapy specialist and the host of Movement Matters. My show is designed to teach you the simplest and most effective treatment strategies to get you out of pain and back to doing what you love. If you or someone you know is having pain in a certain area of the body and would like a free assessment and treatment over media or in person, and then come on the show to talk about it, email us at thinktechmovementmatters@gmail.com. Or if you have a topic you would like to know more about, please email us. My goal is to decrease pain all over the world, inspiring people to take better care of their bodies, to enjoy life to the fullest. I look forward to hearing from you.
Welcome back to ThinkTech Hawaii's Business in Hawaii program. I'm here today with Christopher Lum Lee, and we are talking about economic diversification in the current and post-pandemic. So far, Chris, in the beginning of this segment, had identified three sectors that the state could delve into, which were agriculture, film industry, and finance. And he has a couple more things, I believe. Is that right, Chris? So
Couple more.
I know during our conversations, you had mentioned that manufacturing is also another avenue that we can explore when it comes to diversifying. Tell us a bit more about that.
Sure. Manufacturing is interesting as relates to our geographical location because we import and we're also a conduit of goods that are going to the mainland US from Asia and from abroad. I'm not sure, are you familiar with Jones Act at all?
Yes, but if you can give us like a couple of sentence summary, I know it's a little bit challenging to summarize that, but if you can give our viewers an idea of the Jones Act and how it affects industries such as manufacturing.
Sure. So as you know, there's been a lot of discussion on ThinkTech and around about the Jones Act and its requirements. So I'm not going to get too much into that because nobody wants to hear me talk about that anyway. But what Jones Act does is the requirement is it can, if a foreign vessel coming from abroad comes into an American port, it can't stop at multiple American ports. It can only stop at one. So for example, if you have goods coming to that are the destination is Hawaii and mainland US, it cannot stop in Hawaii and then continue on to the mainland US. It'll have to continue on to the nearest port, which would be California. And then California would then ship it to us. The reason I bring that up in the context of manufacturing is because us being a central location between Asia and the Europe and mainland US is when we manufacture goods, we don't have to ship goods from the mainland to the US. We have space, we have people who can participate in the manufacturing process, and we have the ability to produce goods here. Now, because we're not like other places in the mainland US where you can manufacture something in, say, Michigan, you can manufacture in, say, Detroit, Michigan, put everything on a train or through a trucking service, and then drive everything down to California. It makes sense for us if we consume enough of a particular product type to try to get a structure or a venue where we can produce those goods locally for our consumption. Now, in the short term, something like that is going to be costly because you have to buy land, you have to procure land, you have to build structure, you have to hire people, and then you have to do the actual manufacturing. But if there's enough consumption in it, that's a venue where funds can come into the state through the parent company's revenue stream and then expense to hire local producers where that good can then be produced locally.
Okay. So you've named 4 or 5 so far, and you had also mentioned biotech in our previous conversations. And how can biotech be another sector that our state could look into as far as diversification or helping out our economic recovery goes?
Sure. Biotech encompasses more than the medical testing arena, which has gotten a lot more attention just because of the current global situation. Biotech encompasses medical testing. It encompasses drug manufacturing. It also encompasses manufacturing of other consumable goods, such as DNA test kits, drug testing kits. Right now, our drug testing kits that are used in the courthouse, in the judicial system, is contracted through American Biomedica Company. They're a small company based in the mainland. They produce drug kits. This goes back to just the manufacturing point that I just brought up, that if we consume enough of that, we can produce those here for our use. But going back to the production of medical compounds and drugs, there are 2 companies locally that have produced something really interesting. Is Cyanotech, which is based out of Big Island, and they produce a product called Bioastin that you might have seen around Walmart or maybe even Foodland. And then there's a company called Cardax, which is based kind of right off of Manoa area, and they produce a product called believe, astaxanthin. And those two drugs do a similar thing. And what it does is and I'm not going to get too much into the science, but what it's known for is taking the chemical compound that gives salmon that pinkish color. And when they broke down that compound and really did the research on it, they found that it's used as an anti-inflammatory. So bioastin and astaxanthin have done a good job of commercializing that product as being anti-inflammatory based on a compound that was found in our local ecosystem. That's just one thing we know about. If there were additional research to study other compounds in our local ecosystem, there's no doubt that we'll find something else. Other examples are, with research and things like that. So you see like the UH Med School brings in a bit of funding every year because they're looking at things in our local ecosystem that can be used to treat viruses or diseases or mitigate against the impacts of aging. So I think that presents a pretty sizable opportunity. The issue with that, though, is that a lot of people, when they study medicine, if they don't stay locally, they will go to the mainland. And this goes to any of the other areas I've discussed earlier, specifically in finance and agriculture. The issue is one of the issues as relates to the future of our economy has always been about keeping local talent here, or once they leave Hawaii to study, then they come back here at some point. I think people don't come back because they don't see the opportunity present.
So Chris, let's talk about just to wrap everything up, let's talk about the challenges right now on executing some of these ideas that you presented.
Sure. So the challenges come really from two angles. One is on the policymaking side, with the legislature, and the other part of it is on the entrepreneur side. I think we're seeing right now that economic recovery is going to fall in the responsibility of the entrepreneurs at this point. The policymakers for the last 12 years, let me try that again, in the financial crisis that happened 12 years ago, the rhetoric after the fact was diversify the economy, and there was a sense of urgency to do it. But within a few years after that, when the economy really started to rebound in a great manner, it seems that rhetoric was long lost and forgotten. And then now that COVID-19 is hitting, we've seen the impacts of that. We are now at a point now where we're talking about economic diversification again. So it's obvious at this point that really the policymakers, there's a few things that they can do at this point to minimize the impact of the next time we have a financial issue. Right now, we are in something of an economic timeout. And unfortunately, there's no easy way or nice answer to this point, but this is something that's going to be painful for us. It has been, and it's going to be until this situation gets under control. From the policy making side, I think what the politicians need to do now is focus on getting their financial house in order as best as possible and making sure that it stays that way. Things such as eliminating the nice to have, not the need to have things, get back to the real meat and potatoes of how government works, reducing our debt load and building our cash position is very vital to keeping the state economy going and being prepared for things like this, where we're now running out of unemployment funds, and upgrading any infrastructure within the day-to-day operations of state governments, such as what we saw at Department of Labor's aged IT infrastructure. Those type of upgrades are going to improve efficiency and save us money down in the long run. On the entrepreneur side, innovation is the key, and innovation is going to have to come from collaboration. I know we have a lot of competing businesses in the same industries, but this is the opportune time really to have entrepreneurs get together and ask how we can pull through this together. And one example that we're seeing is the co-working spaces that basically on real estate by giving a venue for small entrepreneurs and businesses to come together in these private spaces using a subscription model. Another one is for restaurants or chefs rather, who are selling their products to use a commercial kitchen, a single commercial kitchen, to co-cook, so to speak. That type of innovation is going to be very important moving forward for entrepreneurs. And it's also going to help them be nimble and flexible, ready for the next economic problems that we have.
Thank you, Chris. And thanks for being on the show today. Again, we were talking about economic diversification and the ideas of those in the time of and post COVID-19. Again, that was Christopher Lum Lee. I'm Kathleen Lee with Kathleen Lee Consulting. Thank you again for joining us on ThinkTech Hawaii's Business in Hawaii program. Until next time.